Hello and welcome to another episode of the Personal Record Podcast. This is a special episode with my newest guest, Justin Wood. Justin is a fantastic runner from the New York City area, and he and I are going to be speaking to you about the New York City Marathon in particular. Justin has run, what will be this weekend, his 18th marathon, and then New York City this year is going to make it a solid 19. So he's coming up on 20 marathons in his life. Justin is a very, very fast runner with a 2:43 PR, which I think he's looking to break this weekend in Hartford in Connecticut. But most interestingly, and for our purposes today, he is the 3-hour pacer for the New York City Marathon, which is a process that I would love to get into at some point. But for those tuning in today, our purposes really are to explain to you the New York City Marathon. If you're running this year or if you'd like to run in the future, we're going to give you a tell-all, step-by-step, everything you need to know about the New York City Marathon, what to do, where to go, how to register, maybe not how to register, you should have done that already, but we're going to get into all of the ins and outs of the New York City Marathon so that you can be as prepared as you possibly can on November 4th of this year. So, Justin, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for joining us.
Tim, thanks for having me on. It's been a long road, and I am not sure I've been prepared for this.
Listen, after 20 marathons, you are more than prepared. Again, you're the 3-hour pacer for the New York City Marathon, which is not easy to do, I really want to get into that because the requirements to be a pacer for the 3-hour marathon are very impressive. You have to run the first half in 1:29:30 and the second half in 1:29:45 or something like that?
1:29:45, even split for both.
Even
halves.
Split for both,
Yep.
Okay. And how close have you come to that?
So I've come across the line in 2:59:31, 2:59:29, and 2:59:32. So I'm not quite on, but I'm very close to the 2:59:30 goal.
That is a pretty consistent record right there. I think you're doing a pretty good job. I think they've found a good person in you to take care of their 3-hour pace group. But first, you've run the New York City Marathon in particular 5 times. I've run this is going to be your 5th time.
That's right.
This is also going to be my 5th time. So between us, we've run this race 10 different times, probably in a lot of the same years. But I think you and I, between the two of us, we have a lot of information that the runners might want to know especially if this is their first time out.
Yeah.
So can we start, I guess, with what everyone's going to be dealing with now? So as of the recording of this, it is, what's today's date? October 9th? 10th?
Today's the 11th.
All right, today's the 11th. We're going to be releasing this episode sometime early next week, so right around October 14th or so. So everyone's really gearing down. This is going to be your 2 to 3 weeks out from the New York City Marathon. We're getting into taper time. So let's talk a little bit about taper. What is a good taper? I've heard 3 weeks. I've heard 2 weeks. What do you do?
I think it depends on the person. So I've done 2-week tapers and I've done 3-week tapers, but the key to a taper is to cut back the overall mileage that you're doing on a weekly basis, but keep the intensity up. I think a common mistake that most people will do is they just envision taper time as being time that you just sit on their feet, sit on their legs, and just put their legs up and don't do anything. I think not running at all is just going to make you feel worse. So I actually go out for short runs and then have still workouts a couple times a week.
So you'll still hit the track, instead of doing your, 10 by 800s, you'll do 4 by 800s. So, give me an example of the kind of workout you'll do 2 weeks out, the kind of workout you'll do 1 week out.
Yeah, 2 weeks out.
And what will be your longest runs?
So at this point, 3 weeks out, you would probably cut back your mileage from your peak week of, say, if you're doing 70 miles a week, maybe you go down to like 60 or 50 miles a week, and you cut back about 10 miles or 10% of your mileage in the weeks leading up to the marathon. So if you're at 100% 4 weeks out, then you go to 90%, then 80%, then 70% of your total max mileage by the week of the race.
And for those listening, if you're not running 70 miles a week right now, don't be intimidated. Not everyone runs 70 miles a week.
It could be 50 miles a week. It could be 40 miles a week. It's, whatever you're comfortable with, but cutting down that overall volume is what your goal is. So, 2 weeks out from a race, I might be doing a 2-mile tempo one day, and then another day I may be doing repeats that are longer in terms of time, but intensity-wise, it's like 10K to half marathon pace. And then the week of the race, I might just have one workout where I do, a set of 1200s or about 3/4 of a mile for those that are not familiar with the track, and do that at a similar pace.
Okay. All right. So for those out there that are wondering about the taper, which again can be a pretty mysterious aspect to racing, not a lot of people, you don't want to be you don't want to be doing heavy workouts. You don't want to be lifting weights the week before. You want to be doing a lot of the things you were doing, just maybe a lot easier, a lot slower. No, not even a lot slower, just a lot less of it.
Yeah.
Instead of those like 10 by 800s, like we said, maybe do 2, 3, 4 800s, something along those lines.
Either reduce the overall volume of the length of the repeat or reduce number of reps. And then for your long runs, instead of maxing out at 20 miles, maybe now you go down to 15 and then maybe 10 miles the week before the race.
Okay, so the race is on Sunday this year, November 4th. November 3rd, workout or no workout?
Up to personal preference. So I do a 2-mile shakeout the day before the race. Some people will do that maybe 2 days before and then rest the day before. It's sort of up to you. And it could be, 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. Some people do 5. So it's personal preference, whatever will get those nerves out of your system.
I like to hop on a bike for a little bit.
Yeah,
I might spend 45 minutes on a bike, just like a stationary trainer, not really no impact, nothing super exertive, just kind of get the legs shaken out, maybe give a nice little stretch.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. What about the carbo-load the day leading before this infamous carbo-load? What do you do there? What advice do you have?
So I try to eat early on in the day. You don't want to eat at like 7, 8 p.m. because you're still digesting before you try to go to bed, and that's no fun when you have to get up at 5 a.m. the day of the race. I would say it's good to carb up actually during the course of the week leading up to the marathon, as well as taking in all the hydration you need through the course of the week, because you don't want to just cram for it basically the day before the race. That's like cramming for a test. So I would lead up to Wednesday, Thursday with some good heavy carb meals, and then maybe start cutting back a little bit on Saturday so that's you're not so heavy the day of the race.
All right. Now, I've heard it described before that, in terms of carbo loading, you're not going to the electric chair. It shouldn't be, whether it's a few days out or the day before, it shouldn't be this you shouldn't have multiple plates of pasta. It should be just kind of, you're going a little bit more carb heavy, but it's still, you're kind of doing what you've done before. You're kind of mimicking what you've done before your long runs before, maybe an extra, scoop of pasta, maybe that extra piece of bread, something like that. A little carb heavy, but you're not going to the electric chair. This isn't your last meal that you're ever going to have.
Yeah, just like, race day, the mantra is nothing new on race day. You probably don't want to do something that you haven't been eating before the day of the race.
Let's talk about that. Nothing new on race day. What does that mean?
It means, don't wear new shoes, new socks, something that you haven't practiced with before. Don't take gels or nutrition that you've never tried before. If somebody passes you a banana, you've never eaten that when you're running, you're probably not going to want to try that on the race itself.
So it's not the time to experiment.
I would say probably not, unless you're going into your 5th New York City Marathon and you're adventurous. But if you're a first-time marathoner, then I'd say it's a good mantra to live by.
All right. I actually know a guy, I think, who's going to try to have a beer in every borough this year. First ever marathon.
I hope he's been training for that in his long runs.
He's been training with the beer stuff, not so much the running stuff. So we'll see how he does. I'll keep you posted.
Be a good experiment.
So, all right. So, like you said, no new shoes, no new socks. How do you define new shoes? Can shoes be too old, and how do you define that?
Yeah, I'd say you don't want to have shoes where you feel your feet when you're running, right? So if you feel it, then that probably means it's going to, if there's any pain, you're going to definitely feel it the course of the race, because things that are uncomfortable at the beginning are not going to get more comfortable through the course of the race. With shoes, if you've gotten new shoes in the last 2 weeks and you've put in maybe 50 to 100 miles, then that's probably enough to have broken in the shoes, maybe even 20, 30 miles. But you don't want to wear shoes that are fresh out of the box, because it's going to take a little bit of mileage for it to conform to your stride and to your feet.
All right, so that's all good advice. So let's get to the race morning itself. Now, the New York City Marathon is a special event. 50,000 plus people run this race. People go out of their way. It's really hard to get into the race, so people will raise money. They'll do the Roadrunner 9+1. They'll beg, borrow, and steal in order to get into this race. And then when they get there, they realize that it's kind of a logistical nightmare. It's really hard to get to the starting line. It's hard to get from the finish line. There's a lot going into it, a lot of moving parts. It's a point-to-point race, so you have to somehow get to Staten Island where the starting line is. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is the best place, or how does New York Roadrunner what do they do to get you to the starting line?
So it's really the race before the race, right? To get there, you have to start at Staten Island at Fort Wadsworth, which is not convenient, as Tim just mentioned. And, it's hours before the race starts. So you can catch 3 different methods of getting there. You can go on a bus from Bryant Park. You can go to the Staten Island Ferry and catch a bus in Staten Island to get to the start. And then you can also take a bus from New Jersey. At this point, you've probably already selected your mode of transportation. Otherwise, you are probably trying to figure out how to get to Staten Island on your own. So those are the methods. It takes about 60 to 90 minutes to get there, and I think most of them have like no later than 6 a.m. for when you have to catch them by.
If you're a New York City resident, or if you're planning on not using one of the bus options, like if you live in Brooklyn, let's say, the bus options don't necessarily, they're not the most convenient if you live in Brooklyn. A lot of people might take, I've taken cabs to the starting line before, but just so you know, there's going to be gridlock on the Verrazano Bridge. It's going to be really difficult to get over. So I would strongly recommend carpooling. If you can get multiple people into a car, it's probably the best way to do that. There are a number of options other than
what's out there,
what's out there, right? A lot of local running groups might organize buses for their runners.
Yep.
But whatever it is, get there early, get there quickly, because the Verrazano Bridge again gets really bogged down with traffic, and it can be really difficult to get over.
And they shut it down, I think, at like 7 or 8 a.m.
Yeah, they shut it down very early, so you have to get there early. Which actually gets back to the eating aspect that we were talking about. The first wave, if you're in the first wave of the race, it goes off at 9:40 in the morning. So if you're
9:50, I think, actually.
All right, 9:50. All right, I'll go fuck myself. Okay, so
Sorry.
9:50 in the morning. So that's actually relatively late for a marathon start. Most marathons start way earlier than that. But again, you have to get out to Staten Island somewhere in that 6 a.m., 7 a.m. range if you want to have plenty of time, like we said, to avoid the traffic. So that means you're getting to the race. If you're in the first wave, you're getting there 3+ hours before the race even starts.
That's right.
And so if on your typical long runs, let's say you're used to eating an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours before, you need to plan that. You can't just wake up in the morning, have breakfast, then go to Staten Island, ready to run, because you might have breakfast at home. You're still not running for 5 or 6 hours. When was the last time you went 5 or 6 hours without eating? Like, you get hungry.
Yeah.
So you have to have food with you, whatever that food is, which again, I'd recommend what you've used in the past on your long run days. That's what you should bring with you. So keep that in mind when you get out to the race. Again, the last wave goes off the 10 o'clock hour, after
11 a.m.
11 a.m. Wow. So that's an 11 a.m. start for the final wave. Is it 3 waves or 4 waves?
It's 4 waves now.
4 waves now. So if you're in that fourth wave, you're getting there, again, somewhere at like 7 a.m. or so at the latest, and you're not racing till 11. So just keep that in mind when it comes to what you're going to bring with you. Make sure you bring enough food. Make sure you bring enough of what you need to get you through race morning. All right, so now the waves. How do the waves start? How do the corrals work?
Yeah, so there's 3 starting villages within Fort Wadsworth, right? There's a blue wave, there's a green wave, and there's an orange wave, or color within that wave. So there's 4 waves overall. There's one at 9:50 that goes off. There's one at 10:15. There's another one at 10:40, and then the last one is at 11 a.m. So the way it works is that each of these starts has the 3 different colors, and each of the colors has their own little area that you can go hang out. So that's going to correspond with the color of your bib and the wave as well. So each of these little color sections is basically like a little mini encampment. Think of it as being like Woodstock, except for runners. Everybody's hanging out there, and if it's rainy, it's going to be muddy. But each of these villages has the same sort of setup where you get Dunkin' coffee, you can go find porta potties, you can you'll have your bag check in that area, so make sure you know where that is, because bag check closes an hour before. And, otherwise you're just sort of hanging out in this grassy area. And, it's imperative that you stay warm, because what's great for a runner, the great conditions there, are not good for people spectating or standing around trying to stay warm before the race. So a lot of people you'll see will have throwaway clothes or like hoodies, blankets and heat sheets just to stay warm during the course of the race. And before the race, and if it's raining, they're going to have something like to keep them covered up, because you want to stay dry before the race.
You might see people actually with plastic bags around their shoes to keep their feet dry, which I tried one year and it didn't work.
No.
The water got in and got trapped in there. It ended up not being the best thing. I would actually recommend if it's a wet day, a wet morning, just bring a throwaway pair of shoes. Take an old pair of running shoes that you don't plan on keeping.
Yep.
All the clothes and everything gets donated to Goodwill at some point, so it's not going to be going to waste.
Yeah.
In terms of the porta potties, bring toilet paper. Just throwing it out there.
Good tip.
You might walk into one and be like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Just something to consider.
So
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
that's one advantage of being a pacer. We have our own porta johns.
so, there you go. That's pretty good. There you go. Now we know why you do it.
Absolutely.
All right. So, all right. Now I'm running the New York City Marathon. It's my first time. All right. Let's say I'm in the first wave, the 950 wave. How early do I need to be in the corral?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's 20 minutes before.
I think that's about right. Yeah.
It might be half an hour before. So
so if you're sitting around, don't think, all right, my wave goes off at 9:50. It's going off before that. So like well before that. So make sure you're where you need to be when you need to be there.
Yeah. So we'll have to check that afterwards. But also bag check closes, I think, an hour before the race. So if you're 9:50, you might have to get the bag check like at 8:50. So make sure you know where that UPS truck is and make sure your stuff gets in there if you're doing bag check. So while they close off the gates, maybe like 30 minutes before, you still need to hang around there for a little bit before they take you out to the starting line itself. So one important thing to note is once they start moving you out to the starting line, a lot of people will donate their clothes there, but you still have 20 minutes where you're standing out on the bridge where it's windy and it's cold and you might not have your clothing. So I would wait to donate your clothes until the very last second.
I agree with that. Yeah, you'll see as soon as you guys start walking, everyone's going to start ditching their clothes, but you're still a solid 15, 20 minutes away from the start of the race. So don't start ditching clothes until you know that you're ready to start running. All right, so the gun goes off. We hear Frank Sinatra singing New York, New York. We're on our way. What can we expect?
Well, first off, those cannons are loud. They really boom. So you're going to see people of all sorts at that point. You're going to see people sprinting up the first hill, which is the Verrazano Bridge, and also the steepest incline you're going to face the entire race. And you're going to see people that are walking and taking selfies along the way. So, you just have to be mindful of those different types of runners that you're going to see in that first mile. I'd say you want to settle in. Don't let the adrenaline pull you too much, and just enjoy the experience, right? You're going to see the New York City skyline from one of the coolest advantage points that you can have, which is from the Verrazano Bridge about 20 miles away. And you're surrounded by people that are all going to embark on this crazy journey of the New York City Marathon. So sort of live in that moment, but don't get too caught up in the hype. Yeah.
All right. So the New York City Marathon, like you said, I believe it's the highest point in the race, actually, or is Central Park the highest point?
You might be right. I'm not sure. I just know that it's the steepest incline.
It's a steep incline. I mean, if whatever you're planning to run, that first mile is going to be a slow one. Conversely, that second mile is going to be steeply downhill.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. So you're going to run probably a relatively slow mile followed by a relatively fast mile. And then at the bottom of that, the Verrazano Bridge, you're actually going to enter your first neighborhood, which is the Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is where I'm from.
That's right.
That's all my kinsmen are down there, all my clan. So you're going to be entering that area. It's going to be the first time you're going to hear a subdued roar of the crowd. It's not First Avenue, but there's going to be a good number of people out there cheering you on.
Still early.
It's still early. You're going to be coming off a really fast second mile, and my advice to you is slow down.
Yep.
Slow down. You have a long way to go. You're only mile 3. Don't let the crowds kind of catch you up. You just ran a fast second mile. Now it's time to get into your pace. It's time to settle in and just start going back to your pacing strategy, whatever that is.
Yeah, an important thing to note there is at the second mile is where the 3 different colors will split off. So orange goes one way, green goes another way, and blue goes the third way. So after about 5K, so about 3 miles in, they all converge again on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn. That's where it's a really wide street, and you are on that for a number of miles, I think about 9 miles. So, that's a good point when everything splits off to try to find your groove, stay in your own rhythm, and get into your race and get in your own head.
It's got some undulating terrain, a little bit up, a little bit down, but not anything too crazy for like that 4th Avenue stretch. Yep. It's a very wide, it's a two-way, 3 to 4 lanes on each side, like thoroughfare.
Yeah.
If you've never been, it is, however, it being a thoroughfare, the terrain is pretty, like the the asphalt is worn down by the wheels, and so you might have to kind of pick a lane, as it were, to run in, because it can be a little uneven depending on what stretch of road you're running on. But yeah, it's a pretty exciting place. You're gonna have a good number of crowds. You can see bands along the way and people cheering you on for the next like Justin said, next 9 miles or so.
Yeah, and it's a great area because you see all the different types of neighborhoods and cultures. You'll see a lot of different flags from different countries out there representing, and it's really fun, and it's really easy to get really hyped up there too. So you'll see people slapping high fives, people sprinting past family and giving hugs. If you're running your race, stay nice and relaxed and enjoy the crowds. They're there to support you, and you should be feeling great at that point. All the early miles, your legs will be pretty fresh. So that's a fun time.
So at the end of 4th Avenue, you're now getting down toward the Barclays Center, where Atlantic Avenue and Pacific Avenue meet 4th Avenue. You're going to be making a left-hand turn onto, I guess it's Flatbush Avenue.
Sounds right.
And then a right-hand turn onto, I think it's Lafayette Street.
Sounds right. Yeah, you're going basically by Fort Greene.
Right. So you're going to be passing the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is incidentally my favorite part of the entire race.
Oh, really?
It is, because it actually narrows a lot.
Oh, I know.
So you go from a really wide area to a very, very narrow area, which actually can be a little bit frustrating. Now, you don't have a ton of room with which to play, but it kind of reminds me of like the Tour de France, where like the crowds start kind of converging on you. I always get a little hyped up over there. You pass, I believe it's the Bishop Lachlan High School band, who are awesome. And they're like, it's a really cool moment in the race where, I kind of feel like I'm in the Tour de France, where again, the crowds are super energetic. They're kind of converging
they're
on
really
you.
Crazy out
they're
there.
Really pressing their way into the street. And for me, I get very excited whenever I'm passing through that area.
You forgot to mention that there was actually a hill there, so that...
there is a hill there, that's right, yeah.
So actually somebody yelled at me there last year. I think I was having too much fun, and they were telling me that I shouldn't be doing that. So it was pretty remarkable.
Was it like a spectator?
No, it was another runner. He came by and
like,
he said,
"Focus, dude."
Yeah,
you did the 3-hour pacer.
Yeah, I was trying to keep the crowds energized and bring our runners through, but clearly he didn't see it that way. So yeah, his loss.
Yeah, exactly. Some people just take themselves too seriously. Anyway, moving on. All right, so now we are on our way. We are trudging through Brooklyn. We're passing through Fort Greene. We are making our way toward
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg, yeah. In Greenpoint area, which is a pretty hip, trendy area. What can we expect over there?
Absolutely. You get a little bit of a groove, and then you go into Williamsburg proper, where all the hipsters are, and they are pretty nuts. Just like your Lafayette Street, they are on top of you, and they are yelling, and they are vocal, and they've probably been drinking since 9 a.m., but yeah, they're crazy.
Just like the rest of the city.
Yeah.
All right. So we get through Williamsburg. There's going to be some turns. There's going to be a lot of 90-degree turns here as we make our way over to the Pulaski Bridge, which is the halfway point of the race itself. You get to the Pulaski Bridge, which is one of 5 bridges you're actually going to cross that day. It's not a huge bridge. It's not a big bridge. It's a steep bridge. Yes. You get there, and it's a nasty little climb to get up that bridge.
See, I didn't think it was that bad, but Santino, who was on your podcast previously, just told me that you're not expecting it. You turn a corner, and then it's there.
Right.
And literally, it's the halfway point. You're on the bridge about a third of the way up. It says 13.1, and it's what takes you over to Queens. But it's probably one of the less steep bridges you're going to go on of the 5.
I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was pretty similar to the Willis Avenue Bridge. I was definitely going too fast last year. I got to the halfway point last year, and I was like, I'm in trouble. This isn't going really well. All right, so now you're in Queens.
Yep. So Queens, you're only in for maybe 3 miles, and you're making a few turns.
It's longer than Staten Island.
Oh, longer than Staten Island, but you're in Staten Island for many, many more hours. So
that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
And you make a couple turns, and you basically are preparing yourself to go over Queensboro. So in Queens, there's only a couple areas where there's loud cheering sections, but it's more industrial where you're going through. But Queensboro is really the halfway point of the race, even though it's miles 16, 17.
Yeah.
That's where people start to fatigue, and that's when they start feeling the race itself.
You're going to have pockets of decent crowds running through Queens, and then you get to the Queensboro Bridge, the 59th Street Bridge, and it's long, it's steep. It is just uphill the entire time almost, until the very end. It has a really quick downhill at the very end of it, but you feel like you're just trudging uphill for over a mile.
Yeah.
You're hitting miles 15 and 16 on the bridge, I believe.
Yeah. So, I think it's about a mile uphill, and That's when people start feeling the legs, and there's not crowd support because nobody's allowed on the bridge besides runners. And so it's, a time where you sort of reflect. I actually like it because you know that this is a time for you to go into your mental hole and try to pull yourself out of it. It's a point where you can start to think about what's coming up ahead, and also to build excitement for the next mile, which is First Avenue and my favorite part of the course. So
First Avenue is probably my second favorite part of the course.
Okay.
So you want to build the excitement, like he said, but you don't want to build too much excitement, because there's going to be a lot of excitement thrust upon you.
Yeah.
So again, you're going to have a really quiet 15 miles, 16. You're going to, again, a steep downhill off the bridge, a left-hand turn onto, I believe it's 58th Street, and then another left-hand turn. But as you're exiting the bridge itself, you're going to hear it. It's going to be a low roar, and then a louder roar, and then a louder roar. And then as you're exiting the bridge, you're just going to be slammed with this wall of noise.
Yeah, the wall of sound is real. And it's something I try to, tell all my runners building up to it, going across the bridge, trying to pull them up the hill, telling them, oh, it's coming. That sound is coming. That wave, those people are there for you, right? You hear the sound like a minute before you actually see the people. And I think that roar is amazing. You get chills.
I get chills. I absolutely do get chills. You come off the bridge, and you have all those people, and like you said, it seems like they're there for you. Obviously, they're not. They're there for everybody, but it feels like they're cheering you on. And some of them are.
They're cheering for you.
Some of them are like, you in the blue shirt. You're looking great. Come on, keep it up. It's a very exciting part of the race. Don't, again, if you're coming off a couple of hard miles on the Verrazano Bridge, and then you get back on First Avenue, and guess what? You're going back uphill again.
Yeah, there's, it's not exactly flat. It's a little bit undulating on First Avenue, and it's easy to go out too hard when the crowds are cheering you on. I face it every year, but I think it's fun to let a little bit of the adrenaline creep in. So, it'll carry you through the next couple miles as you're going up in towards the Bronx.
So as you're getting up toward the Bronx, like you said, so we're getting up to Harlem, the upper echelons of First Avenue. Crowds get a little bit more sparse.
Yep, absolutely.
A few less people out there cheering you on. So you're coming off the high that you were just on for the last couple miles, going up First Avenue on the Upper East Side, and now you're like, oh, all right, back to reality.
Yeah,
I have to do this on my own again. Okay.
Yeah. One thing to note though is, somewhere along First Avenue, if you have friends spectating, that would be a good place for them to spot you, and to make sure that you know which intersection that they're going to be at, because you're going to be able to see them easier than they'll be able to see you.
And it'll give you something to work toward. If you know they're going to be on like 110th Street, let's say, it'll give you that's your goal then after you leave the crowds of the Upper East Side.
Right, and it'll be easy for them to go from First Avenue to Fifth Avenue, which we can talk to later.
Yeah.
Also along First Avenue is also we're going to find gels, nutrition. There's water stops every mile for this race, but I think they have gels somewhere around mile 17 or 18 in the course, and that's on First Avenue.
They should have some sponges and bananas and stuff out there.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so now we get to the Willis Avenue Bridge, which is at the north end of First Avenue, which is going to be your introduction to the Bronx.
Yeah, it's 19 leading into mile 20, I think. So, as you mentioned, it's probably a similar grade as the Pulaski Sky Bridge, and it's definitely where your legs are fatiguing and not too happy with you. But after that, you have a 10K to go, and you're in 20-mile-plus territory, so that's exciting.
Yeah, so now, again, you're going to be dealing with some sparse crowds.
Yeah, it's not...
Actually, I take that back. Yeah, the Bronx isn't bad.
I think the Bronx gets a bad rap because it's not the best area for them to take the route through, but...
It's a little bit commercial because there's a lot of commercial industrial space over there.
Absolutely. But, they've done, in the last few years, I think they've done more to try to pump up that area with more music, more DJs. And actually, one year I ran the course a little bit backwards. So I started from the finish line and went to First Avenue with some friends. And the crowds there were amazing. So the water stations, they'd already set it up at like 8 a.m. and then they were cheering my friends and I on, even though there's nobody else. So I like the Bronx.
All right. That's good. At least somebody does.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. My mother's from the Bronx. Actually.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some decent crowds out in the Bronx for those miles 20, 21, and
yeah, you're only in the Bronx
22.
for like 2 miles or so. There's some taiko drummers too, so that's something to look forward to.
Right. And now you go over I believe it's the 3rd Avenue Bridge, and you're back in
Madison Avenue
Bridge, and you're now you're back in Manhattan.
Yeah, and that's fun. That's you're going to your last borough, even though you've already gone through it, and you're just going down an avenue in a couple turns, and then hopefully you're bound for home.
You're also you're finally running in the direction of the finish line.
That's right.
For the most part, you're kind of either running away from it or, you're running toward it, but you're going to be passing it,
Right.
and like when you go up to up past First Avenue and everything. But now the direction you're running is the direction you need to go.
Absolutely.
I always find that kind of inspiring. Like, I have to go in this direction, no matter what. I have to go in this direction to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Whether I'm walking, running, crawling, whatever it is, I'm going in the right direction. As opposed to coming off the 59th Street Bridge where you're like, I'm going the wrong way. The finish line's like half a mile away if I turn left. But you're going in the right direction. You're making your way back down through Harlem, and there's some good crowds, good crowd support along the way.
Yeah, there's I think a turn around Marcus Garvey Park around 125th Street. I remember one year there was a guy that passed out oranges out of a bucket. That sort of saved my legs and saved my mind when I needed it. And then you get to 110th Street, and that's probably the last really big hill, but that's also a painful hill. So you got a 1 mile stretch from 110th Street to about 90th Street leading up into Central Park. So it's on 5th Avenue, and it's not necessarily steep, it's just long.
It's long, and it's miles 21, 22, 23.
Yeah, 22 to 23, I think.
Yeah. That Marcus Garvey spot though, I like that spot.
Yeah.
There's good people over there, good crowds.
Yeah.
I know the Gotham City runners are always there.
Yeah.
Or have been there in the past. Good people, good atmosphere. But like you said, you get to 110th Street. Now you're at the north east end of Central Park. There's this little circle right there. You're right on 5th Avenue.
Yep.
And now you have to climb. And it's a tough climb.
Yeah.
Just kind of mostly because of where it is.
Yeah. On any other day, it's nothing too scary, but it's just physically you're exhausted. So you just have to push on through, think of all the little pieces of inspiration that you have, all the training you've done. Just keep grinding, just keep pushing, and you'll make your way up the hill.
So you start that climb at 110th Street, you finish it on 90th Street, which, as Justin alluded to earlier, if your friends and family were, say, on 110th Street and First Avenue, it'd be really easy for them to just walk their way over to 5th Avenue and meet you again. So it's a good spot on like the upper, the Harlem area of First Avenue, then make their way over to the Harlem area of 5th Avenue, and then they can catch you. And then once you get to 90th Street, right around the Guggenheim Museum, you make your right-hand turn right into Central Park, and now, I mean, you're home free now. It seems like the race should be over, but it's not.
Yeah. No matter how many miles I'd run in the park, the first time I raced New York City, that park did not look familiar. All those turns, all those bumps, they look like something completely new, and they felt 10 times longer. But there are so many people out there, and there's so much in the crowds that just keeps pulling you along that you can't quit, right? So your mind's going to want to tell you to quit. It's going to tell you that you can just start walking, but you shouldn't listen to it. You should just press on.
Just a little fun fact about entering the park at 90th Street. There's actually the Fred Lebow statue standing right there when you enter the Engineer's Gate, right by that big tree.
He's there the rest of the year except for race day. So around race,
right?
Yeah, around race day they actually move him to the finish line.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, all right.
And if you don't know who Fred Lebow is, he is the founder of the New York City Marathon, or first race director. So
yes, he's famous in the running community. He was there was a fascinating movie about him and like the history of the New York City Marathon and the way he begged, borrowed, and stole to make that race an actuality. But yeah, so I guess then don't wave to Fred. He's not going to be there. He'll be at the finish line.
Yeah, you can wave at an imaginary person there. That's totally fine.
So you enter the park. You're, like Justin said, it's going to be, if you're familiar with Central Park, it's going to look brand new.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to look different. Nothing's going to look the same. There's going to be good crowd support. A lot of people kind of along the way. You're going to be kind of going through some ups and downs. You're going to be going down Cat Hill, and there's a couple little spiky up and downs at that point, which I always struggle with, actually, the downhills in the last few miles of a marathon. It just hurt.
Yeah, I mean, your quads are pretty much shot, right? That's how I feel at the end of races, and then going downhill is just accentuating that. So that's probably why.
That's exactly why. Yeah, I need to work on more of the strength work. But there will be some aid stations. I know I always pick that aid station actually when I Central Park, where I'm just like, this is my last time I'm going to walk. So I like to walk aid stations, or at least take a couple of little fast strides as I get in the nutrition and the hydration. And that's the last one where I'm like, this is the last time I get to do it. So make it count. So I'll take my 5 or 10 seconds, get in my last fuels, and we're back to the races again.
Yeah, I think at mile 25 is your last one before you exit out of the southeast corner of the park.
Exactly. So you exit out of the southeast corner right by the Plaza Hotel. So wave to all the Plaza Hotel residents over there. And you're going to be, this is another wall of sound.
Yeah.
59th Street's a cool spot. There's going to be just both sides of the street are just lined with, triple and quadruple line people just surrounding the last final half mile, quarter mile of the race.
That area is just insane because you need it. Every step there is, taking you closer to the finish, but it's also the last mile of the race. So you need all the spirit that you can conjure up, and those crowds will not disappoint.
Yeah, you need focus, you need support. It's again, you're going back uphill again, that 59th Street.
It's a weird little uphill that's not something you really expect, but it's it's a little bit painful.
It's a little bit painful.
And then you turn in at Columbus Circle, and then you go 400, 800 meters there, and there's a little bit of incline there too.
Yeah, it keeps going. This race just keeps going uphill. It almost seems like it never goes downhill. It just seems to go uphill, aside from those like spiky ones in Central Park.
Yeah.
I guess Cat Hill's like where you're losing that elevation that you have to get back to get to the other side.
That's right. And then exiting the park, you get a little bit out too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely harder in the second half than the first half. So that's something we didn't talk about in strategy, which is take it easier in the first half because it's going to bite you otherwise. All those bridges add up, and there's more bridges in the second half than there are in the first.
Yeah, plus Fifth Avenue, plus 59th Street, plus all these other hills just accumulate, and they just wear you out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a tough marathon. It's a tough logistical marathon. It's a tough marathon to execute. If anybody here knows that or has figured out how to execute it, it's my friend Justin sitting across me right now, which again runs 3-hour marathons like it's his job, which kind of
volunteer job, right?
Volunteer job. But just real quick, all right. So you enter Central Park at at Columbus Circle. You have quarter mile to go.
Yeah, something like that.
400 meters, maybe, or 600 meters.
Yeah,
maybe?
about
quarter mile to go. You're going through again a couple little spiky uphills and downhills and everything. And like, what can we expect? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So you're running up to Tavern on the Green. The finish is at Tavern on the Green, about 63rd Street, I think. So you have to expect there's going to be a little bit of an incline, but then there's tons of people on both sides in the park cheering you on. There's photo finish opportunities, and then just excitement, right? You're going to see the finish line up that little hill before you actually get to cross it. And then there's grandstands set up on either side, so any friends and family that are sitting there, look for them because they've got a great view of you. And you're going to see all the different flags of the different countries that are represented, and that's all leading up to the end of the race. It's basically like finishing your own little Olympics. And then should we talk about after the finish?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. So after the finish, you get to collect that medal.
So firstly, you cross the finish line.
Yeah.
You're now a finisher of the New York City Marathon.
That's right, and it's a awesome accomplishment.
It's everything you're going to expect and more, honestly. It's really a spectacular moment, a spectacular way to end your day.
Yeah.
And now the fun starts.
Yeah, start your day now, right? Yeah. So you and 50,000 other people have probably just completed the marathon, and you get to go pick up that medal and pick up something to cover yourself up and stay warm before you get out to the bars and before you go meet up with your families, and then pick up some nutrition along the way.
But it's kind of a nightmare if you're trying to get your bag, right?
Yeah, so there's two options, right? So if you check the bag, you have to go get your bag, and that takes about a half mile, maybe a mile more of walking, and that will be very slow walking because unless your legs are really spring fresh, you're probably going to be crawling towards your bag check.
It's gonna be you're gonna be shepherded with thousands of other people into the finish or shoot corral where all the UPS trucks are to get your bag, and everyone's just gonna be swaying, in step with each other because everyone's legs are sore. People are gonna be cramping. Literally, people are just gonna be like, when I did it, like people are just gonna fall down periodically. You're just gonna see people drop like with cramps in like quads and hamstrings and everything.
Yeah, the thing you're gonna want to do is just sit down, and they're not gonna let you do that.
Yeah,
they're gonna poke you with like sticks or something.
It actually kind of sucks because like all you want to do is sit down, and everyone's like, keep moving, keep moving.
Yeah, the year I raced it, I remember my legs cramped up, and then they made me walk an extra mile towards some sort of aid station to get stretched out, which is the last thing you want to do when you're already cramping.
Yeah. All right, but you get your bag and you exit, and there should be, hopefully you have your cell phone on you. If not, there are letters lined up along Prospect Park Central Park West, where you can, if your last name is Wood, let's say, you can go to the W area where you can meet your family. But this all has to be figured out, as if, cell phones weren't a thing.
Yeah.
Do you ever try to make plans with your friends when you don't have your cell phone? And you're like, oh my God, I forgot how specific you need to make plans with your friends.
Right.
Because otherwise, if there's any sort of variable in this, now everything is shot and I can't get in touch with these people.
Yeah.
So you really need to if you're not going to have your cell phone in your bag with you, you need to make sure those plans to meet with your friends and family are as specific as possible.
Yeah, I would plan for a specific intersection, and even more so like a specific corner of the intersection or a specific bar or restaurant to meet at, because that'll be easier than probably going to the exact same spot as every other person.
Right. Yeah, just think about what everyone else is. Think about what ever is the easiest thing to do, and understand that everyone else also think that's the easiest thing to do. And all of a sudden you're going to get there. There's going to be 100 million other people trying to do the exact same thing that you're trying to do.
Be surrounded by smelly runners and people that have been up since 6 a.m. supporting those smelly runners.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about, so that's the race. So thank you very much for, explaining to us what we can expect at the New York City Marathon. But let's talk a little bit about you and the pacing and why you pace and how you got into pacing.
Yeah, so my goal with pacing has always been to help people. So I am weird in that I only pace the 3-hour group for the marathon, but I got into it by pacing half marathons as well. So I pace half marathons any time along the way. And, I think there's something magical about helping people get across the line and getting their, I guess, Boston qualifying unicorn time. So, it's been fun. It's a way for me to enjoy the race without actually racing. So, yeah, that's why I do it.
So at what point did you decide that, you wanted to do that instead of focusing on maybe your racing and your, why?
Yeah.
And your personal best and your...
I think I don't like pain. And I realized that when you race, it hurts. And, when I started pacing the half, it was, doing it at a time that was much more manageable.
See, if anybody out there listened to the Santino Panico podcast, he refers to his coach, Justin Wood. And we actually speak at length about how tough of a guy you are out on the track. You just have this stoic face when you're on a, racing around a track for 1,200 meters, let's say, and the last final 200, that you're putting yourself through the ringer. You say you don't like pain. Obviously, no one likes pain, but I think you handle it very well.
Yeah, well, training's different than racing. I think racing takes a lot more guts and takes a lot more putting it out there where everybody can see it. When you do workouts, it's in the hopes of getting yourself better and improving, which I think I can still do without actually going through the motions of racing.
That said, you are racing this weekend.
I am going to be putting myself out there, so it'll be interesting. I haven't mixed it up in a marathon properly for a race in a few years, so
yeah,
got convinced by Allison
Goldstein of the Personal Record Podcast,
yep.
One of our favorites. Yeah, this is a tight little community of guests that I've had on this show. Everyone knows each other.
It's the way to do it.
Right. All right. Well, Justin, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for imparting your knowledge of the New York City Marathon, which is substantial. We really appreciate you coming out here. I think I will speak on behalf of our listeners when I say that, thank you for making this a little bit easier on us and on them, because I think there's a lot of anxiety going into a marathon, and there's a lot of uncertainty going into a marathon. And yeah, they have the pamphlets and the manuals on how to do everything, but it can be a little overwhelming to hear all that. So then to get advice from somebody who's been through it, who's done it over and repeatedly in 2 hours and 3 hours, 59 minutes and 31 seconds, and 2 hours, 59 minutes and 41 seconds, whatever it was, it's good to get advice from one of those people.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all for fun, and that's the most important thing that people should take away, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it, but you should relish it on race day because you've put in all the work already, and all this other stuff is just logistics. But enjoy the race, and good luck in New York City.
All right, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us, Justin Wood, and to all of you out there racing New York City Marathon. Like Justin said, good luck and have fun.